Hello and welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin Leclerc.
And me, Paul Brophy.
On this episode of the Irish Political Roundup, we are talking about the impact of the 2023 budget has on small local businesses and in social enterprise. And we'll also be talking about the mindset that businesses need now to go through these challenging times. Joining us to discuss these topics is Carmel Seery, an accountant based in Dublin who supports small local businesses from bookkeeping to strategic growth and everything in between, making numbers easy. Carmel has spent 20 years as a management accountant in many different industries. Through coaching, mentoring, and consulting, Carmel helps her clients make sense of their figures. Carmel helps entrepreneurs make sense of their numbers and say numbers tell the story of their business. We also joining us is Dr. Senan Cooke, author of 2 books. Senan is passionate about social enterprise and about harnessing the strengths of our local communities and on the challenges of educational disadvantages in the knowledge economy. Senan has served on numerous government task forces relating to social enterprise and rural development. Dr. Cooke has been involved in setting up 7 social enterprises. A retired inter-county hurler with Kilkenny, Senan is a lifelong member of the GAA, first with Kilmackay and Kilkenny, and then with Dunhill in County Waterford. Senan's passions for his local clubs inspired him to publish his first book in 2010, A History of GAA in Kilmackay, from 1884 to 2010. He has seen for himself the power of communities to bring about change. Senan co-founded Communities Creating Jobs, CCJ, a national voluntary shared learning network, which helps communities tap into the huge resources available to them so they can generate their own jobs. His work with the CCJ formed the basis for his second book, The Enterprising Community, published in 2018. His mission for his book is to raise awareness amongst state agencies, the public and the local communities of the vast resources available which they can use and bring out for change. Carmel and Senan, you are very most welcome to the Irish Political Roundup.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be here.
Very welcome.
Carmel, if we could first come to you, and could you tell us from your perspective as a financial coach, a business coach for small local businesses, and who specializes in accountancy, what would your tips be to small local businesses and local shops in our high streets and surrounding streets during these challenging times?
Hi, Roisin. So I'm a management accountant, so I work with business owners in their business looking at their numbers. And one of the things I've noticed over the last while is the amount of fear that's around on radio and newspapers, because that's where the story is. Nobody really wants to report about how everybody is just doing okay. And a lot of people are worried about not the bill they have, their heating bill that they have, the one that they think is coming in the post. And so, you just need to look at where you are in your business, in your life. And, we will all get through this, and stop letting everybody and the media and all of that try and put fear into you, because fear is just not a nice place to be.
No. And that fear porn just brings on more stress, more anxiety, and that blocks that creativity in being creative, in sort of keeping your business open and going during these times.
That's still me, is it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And I mean, things haven't changed that much. Like the government has said that they're going to help us with the bills. So let's just, focus on today, focus on the numbers and knowing your numbers. That's the key to a successful business. looking back and to see what you did well. I know now everyone's getting ready for tax season, you know, they're getting their personal taxes ready. And if you're a limited company, you may already have done that in the last couple of months. And it's time that those numbers, those financial statements do not go in the drawer or a file. They are taken out and you look at them and you read them and you make sure that you understand them and that knowing your numbers, because what's happened in the past will repeat itself unless you do something different. So if you didn't have a good year last year, or you're not having a good year at the moment, there is still time to turn that around, but you must have a handle on where you are right now. And that is looking at those numbers and doing regular bookkeeping and, you know, finding someone, reach out to me if you want to understand your balance sheet and your profit and loss, because that's the history of your business. That's the story of what is going on in your business.
You have a saying is the numbers of your business tell the story of your business. Can you tell us a little about that?
So, for example, if you have sales, you know, and you're comparing this month's sales to last month's sales, and they've dipped, and then you might remember a conversation that you had or an agreement with a new customer where you gave them 10% discount, and you will see that in your your latest profit and loss account. You will see the reduced sales, you will see the reduced profit, and then you will have an idea of what impact that is making on your business and whether or not this is something that you can sustain. When you're not making money on a deal or a sale, and you know that, it's very easy to walk away and say, this is not what I want to do. This is not serving me or my business. But you need to know what that line is, where you can be flexible and where that hard no is. And the only way you'll do that is by understanding and knowing your numbers.
I like that. And Senan, you come from a social enterprise background. So can you tell us, you know, the 2023 budget, how was it? What was the good things that came out of it? Who won, who lost, and was there any good news for the social entrepreneurs?
Yeah, well, really, since the Department of Community and Rural Development was set up in 2016 by Minister Michael Ring, things have changed for the better for social enterprises. The first thing he did was that he decided to establish a national social enterprise policy, which he launched in 2018. And ever since, on a regular basis, on an annual basis, there's more and more funding, becoming available for social enterprise and for community development. The difficulty with social enterprise is that while there is a national definition now, social enterprise is not often distinguished for what it is, and is mixed up with the private enterprise, and is mixed up also on the other side with community development projects. But social enterprise is an enterprise. Really, it's an enterprise with a social purpose, you know, with a strong social purpose. And at the minute, there is the first ever national census for social enterprises is being run at the minute, and we'll have the results in 2023, in early 2023, and then I know I'm not addressing your question directly, but I just need to explain that, you know, because social enterprise causes a lot of confusion. It's kind of an oxymoron. It's social and it's enterprise, and people get mixed up and think it's just they get it mixed up with just voluntary community development work. You know what I mean? Which is wonderful in its own right, but for social enterprises to really become to reach its real potential, it needs to be recognized as social enterprise, and it needs to be treated as enterprise. And while it is associated with the Department of Rural and Community Development, it really should be in the Department of Enterprise and Employment, really, and that's a big issue at the minute. You know, where really should social enterprise be? You know what I mean? And many social enterprise practitioners, you know, with strong business projects, you know, would regard that it should be with the Department of Enterprise, and that Enterprise Ireland should be a major contributor. At the minute, social enterprise gets significant funding from councils, from local enterprise offices, from the leader partnerships, all very, very good, you know, and also then there's philanthropists, and there's also we say agencies like Rethink Ireland, which concentrate on it. But to get to your question of the budget itself, the Minister Heather Humphreys announced in Cavan 3 weeks ago that there was 390 million being set aside for social enterprise in 2023. Now, social enterprise, like I said to you already, that it's a very broad term. So it's very difficult to say you're not eligible or you are eligible. So it's all based on the applications that are put forward and how good they are, like, and how obviously if your application can show how it'll create a job, that's a big plus. If it shows, you know, if it shows how it can provide education, for second chance education for, you know, for workers who have lost their job and who want to be retrained and get back into work in another area, like, you know, all of the, if it shows where it will deal with carbon, we deal with carbon, with climate action and all that. That's another plus. If it shows where it will deal with biodiversity, that's another plus. All these areas are really at the heart of social enterprise, along with childcare, elderly care. Oh, look, all over. There's a huge, broad. It's a widely diverse sector. You know, where so much sport, culture, heritage, enterprise, education, climate action. You know what I mean? All of those are at the heart of social enterprise. Really, social enterprise, normal social enterprise in community, they identify a need. There's a service missing in this community, which is really important, and the government or the private sector are not really going to get involved. They're not really ready to get involved. So social enterprise will step in. A group, a committee, a group in a community will decide, well, we have to have this for the elderly. We have to have this for children. We have to have this for sport. We have to have this. We have a wonderful opportunity. We have a wonderful heritage site here, and we want to develop that for tourism. You know what I mean? So it's a mixture of meeting needs and taking opportunities. You know, that's where social enterprise mainly arise, and you have people who have that kind of interest. You know, that'll put voluntary effort into it. You know what I mean? And as it grows, then it can go anywhere. Like there's some enterprises, social enterprise have started off, but we've had a lot of them. We have an enterprise park down here in Dunhill, and we would have all private enterprises in them. But the whole eco park and the management of the eco park is run by volunteers. It's a social enterprise, the eco park. But we would have 80 jobs and we would have 30 businesses in the eco park, and we've lost businesses because they've grown out of the eco park. They've grown to become bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's extraordinary what's been done all around the country. And that's in the book that I wrote, the Enterprising Community. Like there's 23 case studies from the 4 provinces, from communities in counties around the country, like, you know, and they're only just examples of what's going on, like, you know.
But what about the finances? Sorry, Paul, what about the finances though? How do they survive? And does your funding just solely come from government? Well, really what every social enterprise needs, and what most private enterprises need, is they need some capital grants to get going. Remember, we're talking about volunteers. We're talking about people, you know, who are given their time, their expertise, their networks, you know what I mean, contacts, which is an enormous, if you turn that, if you transfer that into cash, it just would be enormous, ginormous, like, you know what I mean? Like the same as if you turn what the GA are doing into cash. Like, I mean, you couldn't buy it, you couldn't
you couldn't fund it, like, you know what I mean? If you hadn't all those volunteers across communities who are doing so much way beyond the games, providing facilities and indoor facilities and everything else, you know, so it isn't, what was it? Sorry, the question again, like,
they still have to do social enterprises. Do they just get their funding from government? But
no,
you mentioned that they also get them from,
philanthropists.
from the philanthropists, but they still have to watch where as Carmel was saying, the numbers tell the story of how they survive. What is the morale like within the social, this in your area of the social?
Well, the morale, like, just one other place where they get funding is they do volunteer. They fund the beginning is they start with funding with raising through voluntary raffles and draws and all that type of stuff. Like, you know, they'll raise a lot of voluntary funding, and then they'll go to the leader. If they have a good project and it meets the criteria of leader, they'll get a 75% grant. If it's successful, if the application is successful, they get a 75% grant. On the village renewal scheme, they get a 90% grant or 95% grant. In lots of other ways, they might get 100% grant, you know, and that gets them going. That gets them up and going. And
but how do they stay going? You know, I'm sure a lot of the government agencies don't have the funding available.
Oh, no, sorry. Oh, yeah. No, they stay going because social enterprise has a trading element to it. So they're either selling a product, they're selling a service, they're renting a facility. Like where we get our funding in the Enterprise Park in Dunhill is that we rent unit space. We rent space to small businesses, like, you know what I mean, and we would get significant rent from that, you know, and with our education centre, we tender for the delivery of education courses. We would be an accredited centre, and we would deliver education courses around the country. You know, that would be put up by enterprise and training boards, the likes of Tagisk. We would deliver their programs. You know, we would have contract tutors, like, you know, in different counties now around the country, and that, like, you know, and so we would make money, significant money that way. No, you would have to be a real social enterprise would have to be an enterprise that would be able to sustain itself
financially.
And even if it got help with to get a manager, which we are looking for at the moment, we're looking to get grant help for a manager for 2 years, on the basis that in the third year we would be able to self-fund the manager. You know what I mean? You know, it's clearly, that's why social enterprise would like to, first of all, put the emphasis on the enterprise and viable enterprise and sustainable enterprise. You know what I mean?
And that's where the money, as what Carmel says, the money tells the story, the numbers tell the story of the business.
Yeah, that's right. There's no question about that.
Yeah,
And when you're making an application, it's how strong your application is, and what you're going to do is going to help you to become more viable, you know, and more sustainable, like, you know.
Carmel, coming back to you about your numbers tell the story of your business. You know, how do people get that structure in place from the very beginning of as you said, well, everybody now getting their accounts ready for the accountants, and if you're a limited company, you would have had that done. But how do small local traders with that mindset now? Because I remember my first year, I was afraid to phone my accountant, Pat Cahill, and he says, Rosie, it's not me you're supposed to be afraid of, it's the tax man. You know, but how do you say people now get into that mindset of saying, okay, I may have procrastinated, put on my accounts for the long finger. How do they get into that mindset with all the challenges and stress that is happening right now?
So you have to move away from the taxman. Now, the taxman is very important. I'm not saying to ignore him. Obviously, you have to have everything right for the year end. But there are two main jobs of accountants, and often they're split. So you will have an accountant who is a compliance accountant that look for your year-end accounts, and they will prepare your your accounts and send it into revenue and the CRO and keep you compliant, so within the law. And then there's the likes of me, who's looked after your books internally. So when you're starting out and when you're running a business, forget a little, have it in the back of your mind. I don't want to tell people to forget the tax, because it is very important, as you all know. But look at the numbers from your own point of view, that they're telling, that what is it that they're telling you. So from day one, you should be tracking your sales. You should be making a list. And I'm not saying to anyone they have to go out and buy fancy software. They can do it in a copybook or anything on an Excel spreadsheet. For me, it's about you understanding, as a business owner, keeping track of what's going on in your business, what money came in, where did it come from, the dates of that, what went out, keeping a record of that and a list of that. And then you simply take one from the other, and hopefully you've got more sales than you have expenses, which is not always the case at the beginning. You may have more expenses than sales, and you just keep track of that. But you've got to read it from your own point of view, not about tax, because once you start getting caught up in tax, you start thinking, am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to do the other? But if you have an expense that you incur for the business and you have a sale, you take one from the other. And it's about building that relationship with your numbers. And then as you get bigger, you can start investing in software and outsourcing it. I'm a huge believer in doing it yourself first and then outsourcing it. But some people skip the doing it themselves and they send it straight out. And that's okay. If your business is busy and you're doing well, that's okay to outsource that. The key is that when the reports come in, that you look at them, that you go into the software and you don't leave it to the bookkeeper or the management accountant or whoever it is. It always is down to the business owner to keep track of their own numbers and question. You should surround yourself with people who are open to you asking questions and give you answers. Yeah. And if you feel that you're not getting that support, then maybe you do need to look at getting support elsewhere or moving to, but the one thing a lot that you hear, well, there's a lot of things that people say about their accountants, but one of the common things is, oh, I never hear from my accountant from one end of the year to the next. And then he gives me, or she gives me a tax bill, and then they give me fees. And it just leaves a bad kind of taste all around for everybody. But, and you're, as a business owner, you're not getting any value from that. Sure, you're compliant, so nobody's going to be knocking on your door, which is always a big plus. But as to what to do next and where to build a business next, you're not seeing any pathway there. So yes, so do talk on a regular basis. Most of my clients, where I'm helping them with the management accounts, I would have a monthly conversation with them, and that you go through their accounts and that you look at that and discuss then where they want to go and how they want to build the business.
Carmel, can I ask a question? Sorry.
And Carmel, having worked in management accounts myself, Excel is a huge tool that you use. I suppose, how important is it for people to kind of get a hold of Excel and kind of learn the important kind of functions of it as well, because it can, if you know how to do Excel, it can save you a lot of hassle, and it can, in certain cases, eliminate the need for purchasing more expensive software.
Absolutely, totally agree with that. So Excel, so some business owners have struggled with Excel, and I kind of turn that back to them, because what is it that they're actually afraid of, or what is it that like Excel is a list of functions. You can learn, it can be learned. Often when people tell you that they they don't like Excel, or they don't want to use it, or for whatever reason it is, it's because it's lumped in with the numbers, and they have a fear of what the numbers are going to tell them, what this is. Maybe somebody back in school told them, oh my God, you don't do it now anymore, thank God, but like back in the day, they would say, oh, you're no good at numbers, or you're this, you're that. They're very, very keen to put people in boxes and tell people how things were. But often the fear of Excel is not the fear of Excel, because Excel is just is a process. And we tie our shoes in the morning, we brush our teeth, we do all of these processes all day, every day. And Excel is just another one that can be learned. What's happening is there's a block there to learning it, which has got nothing to do with money, or could have something to do with money. Could be a money block or something like that. So, but it's separate from the process itself. A lot of people, they start their business, and if they're not Excel phobia, have a phobia about Excel, they will use Excel for their business. And I have seen very, very profitable companies that are very big using Excel very, very successfully. And there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing about it is it's easier once it's in the cloud, or you bring your account package, it's easier for other people to help you with it and take over the process.
So I'm sure it helps you in your job. You're able, when it's something's in the cloud, you can look at it from elsewhere.
You can have Excel in the cloud as well. It's just that with Excel, you're forever, there's no progress on it. So as you get busier, it's fine when you have 10 invoices a month and you can type those in yourself. But when that starts getting more and more, you're spending, instead of spending a half an hour a week, all of a sudden you're spending 3 hours a week, and it just becomes unsustainable. That it's much easier to have, like now they have readers that read your invoices and pop those through for you, and the artificial intelligence is making that repetitive part of bookkeeping obsolete, or there. You always need humans, but
You do.
And Senan, you wanted to ask Carmel a question.
I was just going to ask Carmel, does she account for any social enterprise? Because I just wanted to make the point that as regards social enterprises, we have a very strict governance code. You know what I mean? We say our social enterprise would be a CLG, a company limited by guarantee, but it's also a charity. It's registered as a charity, and we have very strict governance code, and we have to have annual accounts, audited annual accounts, and it's put up at the company on the CRO, So, like, there's no lesser demand on a social enterprise than on a private enterprise. Like, you know what I mean? We have to meet everything, and so therefore, the argument I make is that if you're setting up a social enterprise, and if the social enterprise is of real value to the local community, you need to have on your board possibly an accountant and possibly a solicitor, or if you can't have that, at least have contact in the parish or in the network, in that network, to those people, so that you can call on them all the time, if you need advice, or if you have an issue or a problem to be sorted, So I just want to stress that social enterprise is the exact same, as private enterprise. Like, there's no easier methodology for managing it, as than so therefore our argument about being in the department of enterprise and employment is that we need access to every benefit or every support that's available to private enterprise, and we should have that as well, along with plenty more.
I'd fully agree with you there, Senan. From my own community involvement, I'm involved with a community childcare facility here in Kilkenny, and we have to answer to many bodies. We're answering to TUSLA, we're answering to the company registration office, revenue, charity regulators. So the demands that can be put on volunteers can be quite high, and I suppose it is really great when you have people like yourself, Carmen, who can understand numbers and see the story that the numbers tell. You know, it can really benefit a local, you know, a local business, which is a small local business.
So the one thing I would see, and this is across the board, I don't really, I have been on boards, but I don't really, in my day job as a volunteer, as a citizen, I would sit on a board but not, in my day job, I don't really have any social enterprises on, but what the experience that I have had, and it's the same across the board, is that the records at the beginning and are not kept. So they would have, because I suppose with the social enterprise, you are looking at reducing, you know, every penny counts. And, you know, you can't have a receptionist and a bookkeeper. Do you know what I mean? So often the receptionist has to do the bookkeeping and things like that. But there is just even to get some set up, some process in place so that people know, so everyone knows what they're doing, and the records are kept. It can be as simple as on an Excel spreadsheet. They have to be kept regularly, and you know, be clear that who's responsible for what, and then keep track of it. You know, I do think social enterprises then have to get audited, where a lot of small businesses don't. So a lot of the businesses that I would deal with don't have to get audited because they have the audit exemption, you know, because they're micro businesses. So that's one that, you know, I suppose social enterprise has a disadvantage on to a certain extent. But it's, I suppose, because it's keeping everybody honest across the board, you know, that's where it comes from.
We all appreciate that there's been a number of disasters in charities and in social enterprises, and of course in private enterprise. You know, there has been questionable things that have happened, like, you know, and we don't want that to happen. We don't want to be in any way, you know, and when we make an application for grant funding, we have to answer all the questions. And if you make an application for a leader grant, there's just between 50 and 60 questions that you have to answer, like, you know, in your application, like, you know, so you have to show you know what I mean, that there's nearly a due diligence done on you each time that you make an application, like, you know. But government grants and government funding is absolutely essential, you know, to, and of course the return on that for the government is huge, because the matching funding in voluntary work put in by volunteers on boards and in maintaining the service of whatever it is, you know, is astronomical. Like, you know, I don't think that social enterprise gets due credit at all, you know, for what they do and the social impact of their work. You know, how many people do they help to lead a better life, to enjoy a better life? You know what I mean? And normally a lot of the social enterprises deal with disadvantaged people, like, you know what I mean? And where nobody, or where few will want to do more. And I know the government have great programs for disadvantaged, and I know the councils are doing great work. I'm not doing that. But the local person in the local community understand the problems better than anyone, and often have the best solutions to those problems. And there was a survey done there a few years ago, and it showed that the least likely to collapse, the least likely enterprise to collapse is a social enterprise if it is supplying a service to a community, because that community will do anything than lose that service. You know, that service that's so good to an elderly person, or so good to a disabled person, or so good to children or whatever. It's so vital for them, like, you know. So there's a power behind social enterprise that wouldn't be behind private enterprise.
But I would also say, Senan, you might agree with me here, Carmel, is that small local businesses also contribute to local communities because they're employing local people and keeping the local economy going. And the local people who have got the jobs are paying tax and the inland revenue. So that's keeping the local economy going too. Carmel, I'm aware that you have to leave us very, very shortly, and I'm just so grateful that you came on with us. Carmel, you know, we spoke many times on the radio, and when I was on the written local radio, going forward now, as you started off on the program saying, you know, for local businesses, there's a lot of fear porn out there. There's a lot of fear mongering, the media, even the headlines in media, the wording and everything's media. What advice and tips now, what 3 tips would you give small local businesses? And when you think about small local businesses, they're not looking out to become millionaires. They're just looking to make a living and be able to bring in a wage or salary at the end of the month. So it's about keeping the roof over their heads. What tips would you give them, as well as what tips would you give them in getting over the winter months and maybe over this lot of fear that we all have in, can we keep our business?
So the biggest tip, and it stands for now or for good times, bad times, all times, is a cash flow. Looking at your cash flow, planning it out. If you can see that there's a gap between your sales and the expenses coming down the road 2 or 3 months out, there's time to do something about it. Whereas if you get a phone call or you're missing something and you get a phone call and you have to pay something straight away, there's an awful lot of stress, entrepreneur stress that goes with that, and that fear. Often when businesses are doing very well is the time that they don't keep track of their spending because they're wearing so many hats. So cash flow forecasting is the number one thing that every business, any size, should look at and forecast. You should always know 1, 2, 3 months minimum what's coming in, what's going out, are there any gaps. You should have a 12-month rolling one, but the further out you go, the more you're basing it on historical evidence and planning out growth and things like that. And that is the number one tip I would have, to plan it forward and forecast. The second thing is, and I'm kind of going into money management now a little bit, is give every euro or pound or dollar a job. And by that, I mean, when the money comes in, say what it's for. So allocate it to something. And, you know, when you registered for VAT, the sale comes in with the VAT, that VAT is not your money. Put it away, put it in a separate account until you need it. So that's that dealt with. Then your sales, put a little bit aside for your expenses, work out what percentage your margins are, you know, your gross margin and your net margin, which I hope I haven't confused people, but how much profit you're making on a sale, and put an element of the sale money away to pay for expenses, put a percentage away for profit, and put a little bit away for rainy day kind of funds. And once you have a little system like that, it's an envelope system that our grandparents probably used back in the day. It still works now today, but to give every euro a job, that helps you map out where you're going, and it also helps you keep control of your spending. And then the third bit of advice is, if you are in debt, okay, well, actually, they're going to give you 4 now, but if you are in debt, do not run away from anyone. The revenue are there to talk to you, talk to them. The biggest mistake that people make when they owe money, or they bury their head in the sand and they don't take phone calls, they cut off communication. Go and talk to all of these people and they will help you. But also, when you do get money in, you can't crash diet out of debt. I love that saying. I heard it there during, but you cannot crash diet out of debt. So therefore, if you are in debt and you get money in, our natural instincts is to throw all that money at our debt. But no, you have to have the plan, so that it all comes back to the plan. You know, is the VAT paid? Is this paid? Is that paid? A little bit here, a little bit there. Talk to anyone you owe money to. Organize a plan, and then when the money comes in, you divvy it out a little bit. it's easier for your sanity, and it also keeps it keeps you afloat, because there will be an element of that in that's kept for growth and your business and to sustain your business. So that there you are. How many tips was that?
I know Paul wants to ask you a question, but I got a question for that too. And I don't want to keep you. However, and if you're having problem and you may be struggling with a lot of small local businesses or startups, talk to your accountant and say, maybe you can talk to the tax man on my behalf and say, look, can we put a strategy, a financial payment strategy in place? Show them you have invoices coming in and when payment is due, and that you'll pay them from that. And as you said, the inland revenue will work with you.
Yes, yes.
I think everybody's frightened of we're still frightened of the tax man and accountant.
Yeah, and don't be, and really don't be. As I say, the worst thing you can do is run away.
Yeah.
Then they think it's a bigger problem than it probably is. And once you're in communication and you're talking to them, I mean, they realize they can't get money if it's not there. So it's much,
talk to them. Communication is key.
Yeah,
absolutely. And Carmel, are the local enterprise offices, in your experience, they can be a very great resource for businesses, be they big or small, with plenty of advice on things you've discussed and much more.
Absolutely. I'm heavily involved with the Dublin City Centre and Fingal Leo's here. And a lot of the time people think, oh, they have to, that they're for grants and things like that. But there's an awful lot of resources there. There's mentoring, there are courses, heavily subsidized courses. There's all those things that you need to learn, anything that you would need to learn. Your local enterprise office is probably running a course on that. And it's heavily subsidized, and they're the best trainers and the best mentors, because I'm one. And it's a nominal fee, because just to keep everyone interested and keep everybody turning up and things. But there's a whole heap of mentoring and course talent that's there, that is available. So there are grants. There are 3 or 4 grants, and they're always looking at different ways of offering grants. But the grants are, a lot of them are tied up with value for money and bringing employee into the business, and a lot of micro businesses aren't at that, so they kind of write off the local enterprises because they don't think they're eligible for grants. But there is a lot of resources that they can use.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I just quick thing for you. I like the part you said for give every euro a job. I think it's something that we could even apply to our own day-to-day finances, how we manage our own money as well. So I really like that.
Can I make a point to Carmel before you go? Look, I'm well aware that small business is the biggest employer by far in the country, beyond the state and beyond the multinationals. As great as they do, small business is the soul of this country. Yeah. Small businesses are. So I'm totally supportive of private businesses, but I was only maybe trying to overstate the case for social enterprise, which some of us regard as the poor relation, and we that's all. That's the only point I'm making, But the work that you're doing is so important, in helping and working for small businesses, Without them, every parish has an ecosystem of a mix of small businesses, farmers. Farmers are business people, and what would you call it? State employees, teachers, and all that. And social enterprises. So private enterprise, social enterprise, it's an ecosystem, and they're all interdependent, and they're all feeding off each other, and that's what makes this country so great, that communities are so really committed, to helping themselves, to being self-reliant.
Yeah. Well, Carmel, we've taken you over your time. You probably are late for your next appointment. once again, Carmel, just tell us how, if anybody's watching this and they want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you?
So just remember my name, Carmel Seery. My website is carmelseery.com. I'm on LinkedIn as Carmel Seery, and I'm on Instagram and I'm on Twitter. I don't know where I get time to do any numbers, but anyway, so just remember my name, and then if you want to email me, it's hello@carmelseery.com.
Remember, you tell people the story of their business. Then you tell people their numbers tell the story of their business. I love that. Carmel Seery, thank you so much indeed. Seven, if I can come to you, Seven, tell us what social enterprise. What is social enterprise? If you could define social enterprise in one sentence, what is it?
Social enterprise. Social. I should be ready for that. No. Social enterprise is an enterprise. Is an enterprise with a social purpose, in which surplus income is reinvested in that enterprise. Is reinvested so no board person, or anyone else gets money from it. It is all reinvested. The money that's made is reinvested in that social enterprise. You know what I mean? And it has a strong social purpose. That's the best you can do. That's the best you can do.
That's brilliant, because it's putting it back in, and there's no profits or anything else. Everything goes back in.
That's right. Everything goes back in. Yeah.
And if anybody really wants to find out more about social enterprise, Senan's book, people can see that there, Enterprise and Community, is really, really great read, and it really gives you a great insight. And Senan, Dunhill Eco Park and Dunhill, the GA Club and all that, it really is a remarkable project. It all kind of started around the GA Club, and it kind of, it grew and grew and grew. So right. It really is a phenomenal setup you have there.
Well, when I've been around the country, we're proud of what we have, but I've been around the country and I've seen the most magnificent projects and developments. It's absolutely wonderful. Connemara West, Drumshanbo and Leitrim, Fairbairn and Offaly. Look, they're all over the place. They're in Kilkenny, Piltown Enterprise Centre, Castlecomer Discovery Park. You know what I mean? They're everywhere. Ballyhale, Billy's Shop in Ballyhale. If somebody visited those places, Piltown, Ballyhale, Castlecomer, and listen to their story, they're just unbelievable, those stories.
Definitely.
And it's wonderful what's going on in Kilkenny and in Waterford and in Tipperary and all the counties,
And that's where the local leader partnerships really do help the local communities.
Yeah. They do the huge way. They do the local partnership company, is it? Yeah, the leader company.
Yeah, the leader partnership.
Their leader has been fantastic. Leader came into being under one of the early 90s, I think. One of the social things in 1989, the social agreements, the social partnership agreements.
Yes.
And it has done fantastic work. Ever since it has transformed. It has helped transform the country, in my opinion.
It has indeed. And even if you take, what a social enterprise can do and stuff like that. If you take the Discovery Park in Castlecomer, that was a former mine which provided a huge amount of, employment to the area, and then when it shut, it was a huge blow to the area, and to see it kind of re-energized and revitalized, and Castlecomer as a consequence has been doing really, really well. So that's a really, superb,
a great example, isn't it?
Social enterprise, and a great example.
Marvelous example. Yeah.
And Senan, you have sat on many boards and state boards, so you have a vast experience of knowledge and wisdom and expertise to pass on to even local businesses and startups and social entrepreneurs as well.
And look. I've met other people. I've met people around the country, and tremendous people around the country. And some of them are people who have run big industries and who are now living in a community and want to contribute to that community. One of the great things about social enterprise is that it's very hard to refuse a social enterprise, because the volunteer is asking you. You can imagine if you're in a community and you're doing something that the community really respects and supports. So there's hardly anyone in that community. If you ask them whether it is a teacher, whether it is a priest, whether it is an accountant, whether it is a solicitor, anyone, if you say to them, is there any way you can help us on this project? You know, we have a particular issue here that we want to deal with. If it's an engineer, I don't think there's anyone would refuse if they could at all help. And that's one of the beauties of social enterprise, is that the people who are helping it know that the people who are working in that enterprise is just doing it for the good of the community. They're not doing it, they're not getting that out of it from themselves, other than the satisfaction they get from being able to do something for the community, for their own community or own county or whatever, like, you know. So I think it has enormous potential, like, for the future.
And Senan, how many jobs do they estimate social enterprises are creating, you know, on a yearly basis?
You see, we'll have a great idea when the census is in, but up to then, the idea was that there was 60,000, you know, jobs in the country. A previous report done back in 2013, you know, came up with that, like, you know what I mean?
And of course, that's money that's spent locally as well, you know.
Yeah, but in Europe, 6% of the European economy is social enterprise, and over 2% of the Irish economy is social enterprise, and Ireland there's a huge gap there for Ireland, which is a natural social enterprise country since Horace Plunkett founded the cooperative movement back in the early years of the 20th century. You know, so there's a huge culture of mehel in Ireland. There's the GA, of course, which is the ultimate.
Absolutely, yeah.
The ultimate expression of mehel and of community and of country, like, you know, of county and country, like, and that's kind of inbred into Irish people, like, you know what I mean. And one of the great things that have not yet been exploited is the diaspora. And we had a department of the diaspora where Jimmy Deanahan was the minister. Was the minister of the diaspora for a number of years, like, and I think now it is absorbed into some other department. But the amount of diaspora around the world who would love to leave a legacy in their own community, they're retired, they've been successful, and if they're approached to help with a project in their own community at home, there's every chance that they will come up trumps and will help it and be very proud to help it. And leave that legacy behind them, you know. I've found that in a number of places, like, you know.
Senan, did the budget, did social enterprise win with the budget 23, or were you happy from your perspective with the money allocated to social enterprise?
No, we're very happy with what's going on in social enterprise. We set up our first social enterprise down here in 1993, and I'm a witness to the change in support that's going on, and great credit is due to Michael Ring in 2016 to set up the Department of Rural and Community Development, and then set up a national policy on social enterprise. And can I make one point? The government, the department is now about to develop a new national policy, and there's a meeting of Southeast social enterprises in Dunhill on November the 13th. In which the department is attending to hear the views of social enterprises in the 5 counties who will attend, hear their views about what caused them the most difficulties in getting their work done. And the second question is, what opportunities do they see coming up for them, and what is needed for them to implement those opportunities? Now, that's a huge, on November the 13th from 10 o'clock to 1:30 in the Donegal Eco Park, and we have a department, a high official from the department coming down to that. That's a great opportunity for social enterprises in Kilkenny, and we'll be getting on to Castlecomer, and we'll be getting on to Piltown and to Ballyhale, and any other social enterprises in Kilkenny to come down to that and tell the department what they think is needed at this point in time.
Definitely. And speaking of Dunhill, Senan, as Roisin said in the introduction, you were a pretty good athlete. You played hurling for Kilkenny. You're in the process of writing your book, or it's pretty close to be. It's ready to be released.
It's completed. Yeah. So it's the history of Dunhill GAA, a sporting and cultural perspective from 1882 to 2022. And those that have been sold at the moment are definitely, there's a great feedback from them. And the book is available in the bookshop, the book centre in Kilkenny, as well as the book centre in Waterford. Well, the same company owns the two bookshops, so the book is available in the book centre in Kilkenny. Like, you know.
Yeah, and it's a great book as well, in the sense that you don't just get the sporting perspective, you get the cultural perspective and the community perspective, which, you know, the GAA, you know, they really do harness that.
Yeah, and on the back cover of the book, we have the GAA manifesto, where we all belong, emphasising that the content within it is really it's really a GAA club with a community ethos, which all GAA clubs are now. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that Dunhill is great, and I know clubs around the country, around the counties. Every club is a wonderful institution, like, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And Senan, I'm just thinking, you know, how, if somebody has a good idea, how does someone set up a social enterprise?
How does somebody set up a social enterprise?
Yeah.
Normally somebody in a community identifies a need, like a need for a childcare, the need for an elderly care, the need for a community centre, or the need for jobs. You know, that's why we were set up. We identified it was after the bleak 80s, the 1980s. We originally were challenged. We had built a clubhouse in the GAA, and the priest of the parish at the time said, if you're able to do that, you should be able to set up an enterprise centre and create jobs and keep young families in the parish. And that's where that all originated. Like, it originated in the GAA club, and then it originated in the parish, and it has been hugely successful. The most jobs we ever had was 112 in the thing, and the lowest number we had was 70. And we have down through all the years, even though the whole world collapsed in 2008 when the financial crisis, and then there was an austerity period from 2008 to 2014, and we had the most wonderful plan ready to implement when the whole thing crashed down around our ears. We had a master plan. Our eco park is 11.5 acres, and then we had Brexit, and then we had COVID, which closed down it didn't close down the enterprise fully or anything, like, but it nearly closed down the education centre, like, you know. But we survived the two of them. We survived everything, and we're now kind of coming back in a big way. We think things are looking up for us in a big way, like, you know.
Fantastic.
We're looking forward to it, like, you know.
If I could ask you about that, because that is really important, and we're going to need that spirit again about surviving the 80s, because Ireland had a really bad economic situation in the 80s, and then 2008, and now in 2022 going into 2023. What, in your perspective of someone watching this, they could have a business, they could have an enterprise, they could be a farmer, as you said. I want to talk about farming in a little moment. But what advice, because it's that spirit, it's that coming together and really, really getting into that mindset of doing what we have to do to survive.
Yeah, the concept of self-reliance is an old concept. When I started off in social enterprise, I started off as a 14 or 15-year-old in Kilmacow, Muinton, Atira. And I was inspired by a lot of the people who spoke at those meetings. And I loved the attitude. The attitude was there. And then, of course, at the same time, I became a member of the GAA. And I saw what they were doing, like, you know what I mean? And they were just not, they were more interested in hurling and football and all that. But they were also interested in the people who were playing it. And if any of the people in the parish could get a job for somebody in the GAA club, or if the GAA club could get a job for somebody who needed a job, or somebody who needed a hand up, not a leg up or a hand up, like, you know, they were first they were first to go and try and do something about it, like, you know what I mean? So it was out of that kind
community
of
spirit.
Yeah, community spirit that I think social enterprise, you know, really fits into that, like, you know, in a big way, like, you know. That's not a very good answer. I don't know, really. Like,
but it's that community spirit, everybody pulling together, everybody helping one another, supporting one another. And we're going to need that now over the next few
we should all remember that people are living in a community, and that we're all social beings, and that we all do best through collaboration, like, you know what I mean? And another thing we need to remember is that those people who do the voluntary work, the people they will get a lot back out of that as well. They'll get looking at people being helped in their community. They're looking at their community developed facilities and infrastructure, you know, and all, their families are all benefiting from that. Their neighbours are benefiting from that. And that's why I think the diaspora, we need to do better with the diaspora and try and make a common cause with the diaspora, especially those that are successful and that would be willing to have something done that they could leave as a legacy, like, you know what I mean? I think that's important.
There is a scheme, Senan, where if you're living abroad and you are going to invest, you know, a serious sum of money into a business, a person can get an Irish passport or something.
Oh, I see that.
So a similar scheme like that for the diaspora, for social enterprises, could be.
That's what we need.
Yeah,
that's very good, Paul. Now that's a very good suggestion. And I read there what Louth have done, or the money that they've got through that scheme that you're explaining. But a similar scheme for social enterprise, which would be rooted in the community of where everybody is from, you know, and where people, the diaspora are from, and would draw them back to helping their community. I think that would be a wonderful scheme, Paul. I'm going to bring that up. I'm going to bring that up on the 30th of November. Thanks, Paul.
And I would say on the 13th of November, we'll have the Kilkenny League of Partnership will be down with you as well.
Well, we certainly hope that Kilkenny social enterprises will be down with us, like, because we want to learn from each other.
Yes,
we're saying everybody can learn from each other, like, you know. Social enterprise is a kind of a shared learning network where people, because social entrepreneurs have no problem with telling their secrets, with sharing their secrets, like, whereas private enterprise maybe in a more competitive frame of mind, we're in a more collaborative frame of mind. We want to tell others, we want to show others how we did it. We want to learn from others how they did it. And we want to know, you know, so social enterprise is a superb concept, you know, for that, like, you know. I don't know.
Oh.
And Senan, farming, you mentioned farming earlier on. The farmers are busy, are businesses as well. Farmers are left out in really, in my opinion, you may agree or disagree, Paul and Senan, but farmers do not get the respect they deserve in the economics of keeping our local economies and national economies going.
Well, when farming is going well, communities are going well.
Right.
You know, because they spend locally and they create wealth locally, like, you know what I mean. And I think when I was in school as a young person, we were told that Ireland had no natural resources. You know what I mean? That we hadn't zinc or lead or gold or all these, and that's what they thought was natural resources. And now I'm listening to the news tonight, and Novartis are leaving off 500 people, but they've made a statement to say that they're not going to. They have a company in Cork and in Dublin, and the reason why they're going to stay in Ireland is that Ireland is an ecosystem of talented people, creative people, educated people. You know what I mean? Which, in my opinion, is the greatest resource of all, because even technology is only as good as the people who are using it, like, you know what I mean? And Ireland have the scientists and have the technologists and have the entrepreneurs and have all that. And a huge amount of that, I think, comes from farming. I think farming, because we're such a farming country, I think, well, that's what I've observed, for want of a better word. I've observed how farming has made a huge contribution. And well, they may not be getting the thing. I'm not sure about that, like, because I think everybody knows plainly and clearly that they're essential to the future of the country, like, you know. They're absolutely essential to the world, to the world, like, you know what I mean. And to Europe.
Agriculture is a major, as you said, it's a major part of our communities, and we need to get back to becoming self-reliant and providing our own resources with food.
But farming is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, exporter in the country, like, you know, and that means that there's a lot of Irish people out foreign, out overseas and all that, like. So this farming have links around the world, like, you know, the GA have links around the world, business have links around the world, multinationals have links around the world. Look, I go back to what Paul proposed there or suggested there. I think that's a wonderful idea, like, you know. Thanks very much, Paul.
Yeah.
But do you think we need to get back, from your point of view, as you said, farming and agriculture, you know, they are the heart of the communities, and they keep the money in the communities.
That's right.
But we are not self-reliant in providing our own food through agriculture. Do we need to get back to really growing our own food and our own resources?
Well, look, it's not great when you go into a supermarket and find that you're buying potatoes from Italy. I'm talking about potatoes now. Look at apples and oranges and all those fancy fruits and all that, and you know, they can't grow. They can't be grown in Ireland. But there's an awful lot more can be grown in Ireland. You know, that would reduce some of the imports. Look, that's a huge question. I wouldn't be in any position to answer that question with any great authority. Roisin, I have to admit, like, you know.
But there again, it's all about social enterprise, and it's about keeping jobs local, and it's about the community.
Yeah, it is.
Well, Senan, can you tell us about what inspired you to write your two books? Let's talk about first one, your two books, the one you wrote in 2010 about the history of the Kilmacow and the GAA.
Yeah, well, in 2010, I attended a funeral in Kilmacow, and the last championship that Kilmacow won, unfortunately, was 1956. They won the junior championship. There was no intermediate championship in Kilkenny at the time. And one of the players that was there, the funeral was of one of the players was on that team, and a well-known player, and one or two others were there, and they knew that I had retired from Waterford Crystal at that time. I went to join DCU as a lecturer after that, but when they asked me, was there any possibilities that I would consider writing the history of Kilmacow? And of course, I as a native of Kilmacow and having played for Kilmacow from under 12 up to senior, I couldn't resist saying yes, which I didn't realize what I was after saying yes to, like, you know. And it took me 4 years to write the book, but I got tremendous satisfaction from it, like, you know, and I actually am very proud of it, like, you know what I mean. So the second book then was the enterprising community. Well, really, I just needed to do that to try, and the reason why I did that was to try and promote social enterprise within government. And I was working as a lecturer in DCU, and DCU supported what I was doing. And the president of DCU at the time, Brian McGrath, wrote a terrific forward in that, and they actually part-funded it as well.
I actually have it here in front of me, Sen, and I can read it so our viewers can get a sense of how good this book is. As a community, we in DCU would argue that Ireland has a natural affinity with social enterprise. Indeed, we believe we can become leaders in the development of social enterprise at European level over the next decade. So that's a fair old statement.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks for that. Like, the final book was John Hill, and we thought that the centenary of the founding of the club was 1904, or was 2004, and they asked me would I start doing something on it, and I said I collected some stuff of the people, and we did a bit of research, and we found that the club was founded in 1890. So we gave up and we didn't do anything. And when COVID came, it closes all down in 2020, March 2020, the issue was raised again. So I was locked in for 2 years, the same as everybody else, like, you know what I mean? Like, restricted, and I was retired. So that's where I spent the 2 years, on that, like, you know what I mean? And I'm delighted with the outcome, like, you know what I mean? Like, and everybody down here is delighted with it, like, so look at, I'm just delighted with that I did it. It was tough going, to be honest with you, because I wasn't able to go and visit people and interview them face to face. I had to ring them, and I wasn't able to connect with some of the elderly people. I just couldn't connect with them on the phone. Like, you know, I needed to be with them. I needed to observe their facial expressions. I needed to observe their body language. I needed to leave one question after another and tease out with them their memories of long ago and of the great days that they had and the bad days they had and all that. Like, but that was a big. But other than that, I was able to go well. I had my email and I had, you know, I had access to the library, to the Waterford Library online, and I was able to get into the Munster Express and the News and Star and the Dungarvan Observer, and you know, so I could do an awful lot. Like, but I would have loved to been able to visit people in their homes and sit down with them for an hour or two or three. Actually, when I was doing the Kilmacow book, I spent 2.5 days with Dick Welch of Tullaroan, and they were two of the best days I had on it. Like, he was just, his father was connected with the first Tullaroan team, and he knew Larry Marr and he knew all the great Tullaroan hurlers, and you know what I mean. And I just had a wonderful time with him, like, you know, and his wife Kitty at the time. Like, he's dead now, a lot of mercy on him, like, you know. But he was a wonderful character, like, you know. And of course I was able to go up to Tommy Welch in Ballyhale. I was able to go to Paddy Buggy in Sleeveloo. I was able to go and visit them and talk to them, and to Michael O'Neill in Kilmacow and everything. I was able to go to all the Kilmacow people and everything. But like, I just wasn't able to do that with the Dunhill book, like, you know.
Yeah.
The pandemic has a lot to answer for.
I have a lot to answer for you. Yeah.
You know, we're running out of time. Senan, we're so delighted to have you and Carmel Seery join us on our 5th episode of the start of the Irish Political Roundup. And, you know, thank you for taking the time to come on and talk to us today, because local businesses, small businesses, and social enterprise is a political issue, and it is very political. And, you know, everything when it comes to money and communities, business is all about communities, and that is what part of politics.
That's right, Roisin. Yeah, that's right, Roisin. And just can I make one final point I didn't mention, are the dormant resources that are available to social enterprises. Like, if you're living in a parish and there's a guard or barracks after being closed down, there's schools after being closed, and new schools built, there's a branch of a bank being closed down, you know, there's derelict sites, there's heritage sites, there's commonage, you know, there's parish land, there's council land. It's easy I won't say easy, but it's highly possible for a social enterprises to get any of those things from the state, from the council, you know, from, you know, they're inclined to give them to social, to get them going, to get them up and running. So that's a big thing that a private person would have to pay for, like, you know.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the community might have to pay for it as well. But we got our eco park at a very 11.5 acres at a very low cost, and the money that we paid for it was then invested in the parish by the parish priest, like, you know. So everything was going our way, like, you know what I mean. So I'm just
well, there's money, there's the church.
I know they did a lot of good. Unfortunately, things have changed, like, you know.
Yeah. Oh, but you know, Senan, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, and your book sounds absolutely, 2 of them, and the third one that is now completed sounds absolutely fascinating. And it's all about the community. Yeah. And you think communities create a region, and all the regions create a nation, and that's right. What it's all about.
100%.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Roisin and Paul for inviting me on the program. Thank you.
It is our absolute pleasure. Senan Cooke, thank you so much indeed. I'd like to thank Carmel Seery, accountant from Dublin, who says the numbers of our business tells the story of our business. And Senan Cooke, who is an expert on social entrepreneurship. Thank you so much indeed.